Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here and welcome back to another video for Monster Hunter World. Today was the first day of the actual E3 show. Now the press conferences are out of the way and my first appointment of the day was with Capcom. I was fortunate enough to be one of the first people to get to see the full gameplay demonstration of a hunter against the new dinosaur looking monster known as Anjanath. It's also worth mentioning that there were two main demos. The one at the Capcom booth was a solo demo. It lasted about 20 minutes and the hunter took down the monster on his own. Meanwhile, the second demo took place over at the PlayStation booth, and this was the one that showcased multiplayer, which is something that was severely lacking from the reveal trailer. There was a brief nod to multiplayer, but if you don't know what to look for, or you didn't know what to look for, then you'd be forgiven for missing it. But either way, I've now seen about 40 minutes of gameplay, I've taken a ton of notes, and there is loads of really awesome information that I want to share with you guys. I also put up a Reddit post this morning to ask if you guys had any questions that you wanted answered. Sadly, I wasn't able to sit down with developers to get too many answers, but I did have a good chat with the European community manager, Socks. He's actually been answering a load of questions over on his Twitter, which I will link down below. Definitely make sure you check him out because he is a great source of information, but he also helped me answer some of the questions from you guys as well. So in this video, I'm just going to pick out some of the most asked questions and answer as many as possible. I will, however, be following up in the next couple of days with a video talking about absolutely everything we currently know about the game, so do stay tuned for that. But anyway, on to the questions and answers. First up, yes, all 14 weapons will be making a return in Monster Hunter World. However, at this stage, there has been no mention of whether Prowler will be playable, so for the time being, just know that the 14 weapons are playable. Next, are there any differences in visual quality and frame rate between base PS4 and Xbox One and PS4 Pro and Xbox One X? To which the answer right now is that they are targeting a stable 30 FPS across all platforms. Whether PC will have the option to run higher or uncapped will of course remain to be seen, but for the time being, the kind of on-the-record message is that they're aiming for a stable 30 FPS for all consoles. When asked whether the hunting styles that were introduced in Monster Hunter Cross would be making a return, the answer we were given was quite simply, quote-unquote, brand new title, brand new gameplay systems in place. And while that's admittedly pretty vague, from what I saw during the demonstration today myself, they appear to be gone. However, all the weapons have been revamped, they have some new moves and behave in a familiar yet new way. So there's definitely going to be some new things to mess around with, but from what I saw, it seems like Hunter Arts are going to remain a thing for generations and generations alone. Next up, when talking about the game, it's often referred to as an open world game, but to be very clear, this isn't a traditional open world. There will still be different maps and hubs, which you've come to sort of associate with Monster Hunter. However, when they say open world, they mean that the map itself is seamless. There are no zones, you simply load in, and until your quest is done, you will not see another loading screen. So gone are the days of, say, going from area like 1 to 2 to 7 to 6, however you want to say it, they are going to be gone in Monster Hunter World. You will pick your quest, you'll go out, you'll end up in the environment, and while you're there, you have a completely open map to explore. Something else that came up in the light of the trailer yesterday was the notion of underwater and whether underwater combat will be making a return. I can confirm now that it will not be returning. You will be able to swim underwater, as you saw in the trailer, in select locations, but you will not be fighting underwater. Gestures are also present, as they always have been. The game will support in-game voice chat for communication. Palicos are also in-game, and the Palico armor system is back. Offline play is present, so while online multiplayer is indeed a thing, it's not like, say, Frontier or Monster Hunter Online, which are always online. Another question relating to multiplayer: if you saw yesterday's video, I mentioned that the flare is used to open up your lobby so that your friends can join you in the new kind of drop-in multiplayer. However, to be very clear, you can, as you have always done, pre-form your team and embark on the quest together. So you don't have to rely on this new system. It is simply there if, say, you start a quest on your own, need some help, and you can then call in some backup. On top of that, damage numbers are indeed present in the game, so when you attack, you see small damage numbers pop up. However, to squash a random concern that was going around, monsters do not have visible health bars. This is a traditional Monster Hunter experience. You fight the monster, you observe it, and you hunt it till it's dead. But of course, having damage numbers there does make it a little bit easier to kind of work out, how much damage you're doing with your weapons, and it's just definitely very useful not having to, say, divert your attention to a spreadsheet to try and calculate these numbers. They are very small, they're not very intrusive, and to be honest, once you start sort of playing and you kind of get into the flow of the combat, you just tend not to notice them anyway. Also, on the notion of this being a traditional Monster Hunter game, yes, this is a main series Monster Hunter. It is not a spin-off, and while this isn't specifically titled Monster Hunter 5, that is essentially what it is. With regards to whether the game will have actual story and cinematics, in truth, I can't completely answer this question right now since I don't know the full answer. But what I can say is that during the gameplay demo I had, there was a part near the very beginning of the quest where we spoke to an NPC. She was fully voiced, and there was sort of like a mini kind of cutscene with her, and she guided us through aspects of our hunting to begin with. So if small things like that are voiced, then I have my hopes pretty high for some more kind of cutscenes and some more in-depth stuff. After that very important question, how has the series changed from the Monster Hunter we currently know? And again, to answer this question, it's really a combination of many things, and I'm sure in time Capcom will go over this in more detail, but to give you a few examples, the game itself is just a lot more fluid. I personally am a huge Monster Hunter fan. I've been playing since Freedom's 2nd, and I am used to the somewhat sort of clunky nature of the game. Once you're used to it, you don't really notice it anymore, but World is very clearly making a conscious effort to really smoothen out the experience. Gathering items, for example, honey you see hanging from a tree, you can simply run past it and grab it without having to kneel and gather. Same goes for herbs or bushes. When you're using healing items like a potion, you don't actually have to stand still and use it. You can move around slowly. You can't actually sprint, but you can of course at least move yourself, so if you saw a monster coming in, you don't just have to stand there like a, sitting duck. On top of that, there are now creatures or objects in the environment that you can actually use to hinder the monster. Examples being a shock frog. That's not actually what it's called, but it's effectively what it is. If you kick it, it starts to kind of pulsate and bulge, and a few seconds later, it will then explode into what is essentially a paralysis style effect. If the monster gets caught, it will then sit there for a little bit, and you can of course get some free hits on it. When you're poisoned, you'll now see purple colouring on your character to indicate that you are poisoned. And even in combat, we only got to witness the greatsword, heavy bowgun and bow in action, but all of them, even the clunky greatsword, which is still slow, as it should be, but even this was more fluid. The attacks seem to flow better from one to another. The bow has this really awesome combo where you sort of do this kind of fade slash, or fade dash, should I say, after a shot. So you kind of fire an arrow, dash off to the side, and if you do this twice, the third attack ends up being a fire arrow. The hunter effectively grabs the arrow, strikes the ground, and it lights up to unleash fiery hell. There's also a radial quick select menu for items. The traditional item scrolling menu does still exist, but the new radial one is a bonus that allows you to quickly use mapped items. So when you go to select an item, you can then use your right stick to kind of swing between them and grab, like, say, potions or traps or knives or whatever you want to use, whatever you map to them. That is how you use that menu. And on top of that, this is a pretty big one, you can now change your gear mid-hunt. If you go in with, let's say, full Rathalos gear and a greatsword, but midway through the mission you decide that you'd have been better off with, say, a different set of armor or a different weapon, you can actually go back to the base camp and swap gear, which is pretty sweet. And you can also fast travel to the base camp as well. And of course, we already spoke about the damage numbers, so to get you started, those are some changes. Moving on from there, what are these quote-unquote guiding fairies? So to begin with, they're actually called scout flies, and they're used to help you track the monster. You load in and you begin scanning things like footprints or collecting mucus from trees. Every time you do this, bugs essentially level up, and when the bar is maxed, they will then help you seek out the monster. Once you find the monster, if you engage in combat, the bugs will then go red to indicate that you're in trouble. Next up, what are these grass cloaks, the ghillie suits? Well, these actually serve a multitude of purposes, and there's more than just the ghillie suits. The ghillie suit specifically helps with camouflage, as you'd expect. You put it on, and it gives you a way to hide from the monster, especially when you consider you don't have loading zones or anything like that to hide behind. You're going to have to use the environment around you, and of course, things like this at your disposal. However, there are different mantles, and by the way, that's what they're called. They are called mantles. The one we spoke about was the ghillie mantle, but the other one we saw in the demonstration was the challenger mantle, which effectively draws the monster's attention so that they will chase you all the time. Which in gameplay terms is super useful, because if you can then use this to lure a monster into a trap or a different part of the map, then you can definitely use that to your advantage. And that, my friends, is pretty much it for the time being. There is still so much to talk about, but to begin with, that should answer a few of your burning questions. If you have any more questions, again, drop them down below. Be sure to hit that like button if you guys enjoyed the video, and of course keep it locked for much more E3 coverage, and of course, much more from Monster Hunter World. Thank you very much for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.